Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Earth 2 podcast, your weekly exploration of the DC Comics multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters to the Silver and the Bronze Ages of comics. I'm plundering Peter Watson.
And I'm dangerous Dave Steele, if you like. Hello listeners, welcome back. Now, if you've been with us recently, you'll know we've been building up to the launch of Secret Society of Supervillains. Last week we had that nice little Charlton sidestep, and the week before that we had lots of fun in the jungle with Congo Bell. But this week, you might be expecting us to do issue 1 of the Secret Society of Supervillains ongoing, but that is not the case. Isn't that right, Peter?
It most certainly is not the case, yes. Because when Secret Society of Supervillains was originally proposed, it hit a bit of a snag right away.
Yes. Listeners, if you go and grab your copy of the Secret Society of Supervillains hardcover, volume 1 that is, or if you're like me and like to show off, grab your copy of Amazing World of DC Comics number 11, cover dated April 1976, and turn to page 22, where there is an introduction to what we're doing today from none other than Paul Levitz, or Paul Levitz, or however it's pronounced, which Peter will now read for us now.
Curious Case of the Changing Criminal Club. On the following pages, you'll discover the Secret Society of Supervillains number 1. No, not the number 1 that reached the newsstand this past winter, but an entirely different version of the same magazine. Curious? We thought so. Beware the Brotherhood of Crime is the original version of the Supervillains saga. Editor-writer Jerry Conway put the issue together around the simple concept of teaming up a group of supervillains, and collected Grodd, Star Sapphire, Clayface, Captain Cold, and the Manhunter clone to face... but that would be telling. Then, after the issue was complete, Jerry sat down with then-publisher Carmine Infantino to design a cover, and was surprised to find that Carmine's concept of the magazine was significantly different from his. Most of the differences, although significant, were in the degree of background detail and art style. And while some companies might just try to fix them as they went along, DC decided to go ahead and give the mag a whole new look. As a result, the Secret Society of Supervillains number 1 that rests comfortably in your collection features Grodd, Star Sapphire, Captain Cold, the Manhunter clone, and the Mirror Master, Sinestro, Copperhead, and more menaces in the wings. Not to mention the unusual Sinister Citadel headquarters, and the art team of Pablo Marcos and Bob Smith. In retrospect, we think they're both fine stories. Entertaining, exciting, and colourful. In fact, everything a comic fan wants. But, of course, we couldn't print them both in the same magazine. So here we are, with the curtain going up for the... is it the first or second time? You decide. Better yet, don't waste time deciding, just enjoy the story. So says Paul Levitz. P.S. If you enjoy the regular bi-monthly Supervillains mag, read this story especially carefully. You'll get some interesting clues to what lies in the months ahead.
Interesting. Is it worth us telling everyone about the cover to Amazing World of DC Comics number 11?
Can do if you want. So the cover for Amazing World of DC Comics number 11, it's a lovely red cover. It really pops, it's great. Along the banner at the top, we have an array of DC heroes. Swamp Thing, Wonder Woman, one of the horror hosts from The Witching Hour, Sergeant Rock, Captain Marvel, Superman, Batman, Kamandi, The Flash, Green Lantern, Kane, Aquaman, and Tarzan.
Gosh.
Amazing World of DC Comics is the logo. Behind the scenes, news and reviews, DC heroes on the screen, April 1976, number 11, $1.50?
Goodness me.
It's very expensive. Anyway, this is a really striking cover because at the very centre of it, we have Captain Cold, David's favourite. He's surrounded by supervillains who are all laying into their assorted heroes. At the back, we have the Joker who's kicking Batman in the back of the head, and he's saying, "Out, you superheroes! This mag belongs to us, the supervillains!" Lex Luthor's beside him, and he's punching Superman, who looks pained. Ocean Master is sucker punching Aquaman, my goodness.
I don't want to speculate what Captain Cold's doing to the Flash.
No, but the Flash certainly doesn't look happy about it.
He doesn't.
Sinestro has got his hands around Hal Jordan Green Lantern's throat.
Gosh.
And Dr. Light is standing smiling behind Wonder Woman.
The mind boggles.
Yes. make your own connections there.
Yeah, so there we go. There's some supervillain focus in this issue of Amazing World. E. Nelson Bridwell, God bless him, comes up with a sort of an interview with Sinestro, which is quite amusing. And it's just sort of general stuff about the role of supervillains, etc. There's quite a few issues of Amazing World that had unpublished stories, so quite a chunk of this issue is taken up with this story that Pete and I are going to read. But there's also the usual advance information. There's an interview with Dick Dillon. There's a feature on Eclipso. And, I'm never sure how to pronounce this guy's name. He was writing Daredevil for a while. Was it David's? I always wanted to say Michelini, but I don't know if that's right.
I think it's Michelini.
Right, something like that. That chap, anyway. Feature with interview with him where he talks about how he goes about writing a story. So I really wish DC would reprint all of Amazing World.
It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Yeah. I mean, if we can get Who's Who Omnibus, surely we can get an omnibus of Amazing World.
Yeah. I think I've had a full set since about the mid-2000s. I remember how euphoric I felt the night I managed to nab the Legion of Superheroes issue from an eBay seller in the States for not very much at all. And of course, they sent it Surface. So it took forever to get here, but that one and one other one from the same person. It was one of these things. It was, in my early days of eBay, it was one of the things that I focused on putting a full set together of.
Excellent.
Listeners, do you have any copies of Amazing World of DC Comics? Write in and let us know. Now, before we start, listeners, it's worth pointing out, and I'm sure most of our listeners will know this, that round about the same time that DC was publishing Secret Society of Supervillains, Marvel Comics was publishing Supervillain Team Up, which generally tended to star, for the first few issues at least, Doctor Doom and the Submariner. Namor used to flip about between being a goodie and a baddie in those days. And Supervillain Team Up kicked off with two giant-size issues, one that was published in December 74 and one that was published in March 1975, with the ongoing series starting in May 1975 and running to issue 17, which was published in March 1980. And what happened over the last few issues, basically issues 15, 16 and 17 of Supervillain Team Up were essentially published a year apart because apparently there was a bit of a legal tussle between Marvel and DC over the term supervillain. I don't have any more details, unfortunately. I've not really found any more details. But it's worth sort of considering that while Captain Cold and Sinestro are getting up to mischief in the pages of the stories that we'll be covering, Doctor Doom and the Submariner will be having a bit of a tussle with the Red Skull and Magneto and the Shroud and the Fantastic Four and some other people over at the opposition. We're a bit light on bonus material this week, so I'll probably put a Supervillain Team-Up gallery together for the socials this week just to mix things up, so watch out for that at some point. Listeners, do you have any copies or fond memories of Supervillain Team-Up? You can write in and let us know. That'd be lovely.
I certainly do. Also, before we start, it's worth pointing out that this story is in black and white. It wasn't actually coloured for Amazing World or for the reprint in the hardback. And I think this is the first black and white story we've done.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, you are right. Of course you are. I mean, it's interesting that it wasn't coloured for the hardback. I don't think it would have taken them too much of an effort to do that.
Yeah.
That'd have been quite interesting. That probably cuts down the number of words that I'll use by about 12 or 15 as we go through this. So we begin then. Large splash image, which, as you might expect, has a little caption at the top.
Attention! You are cordially invited to attend the first bi-monthly meeting of the Secret Society of Supervillains. Attend or die!
Yeah, it kind of looks like a folded up invitation now that I think about it.
5 minutes ago, this man basked in the joy of victory. That particularly pleasant feeling normally associated with a job well done. In this case, the theft of the Vanderberg diamonds. His name is Captain Cold, and as of right now, he's basking no longer.
So after all this captioning, we see Captain Cold standing, holding a bag in his hand. I was wondering if it was maybe his lunch or some change to go down to the machines at the arcade, but it must be the Vanderberg diamonds. And he is being caught in a handful of sharp, bright spotlights, and he looks appalled and yells, "What in? The lights? Who killed the lights?" And off camera, a voice says,
As a matter of fact, dear Captain, we did. Total darkness was necessary for teleportation. I hope we didn't inconvenience you too much, Captain, but after all, you have ignored our invitation.
And we turn the page to a massive double-page spread showing Captain Cold now standing on a sort of podium, surrounded by other bad guys. We see, pointing at him, the woman who just spoke. It is Star Sapphire, long-term Green Lantern villain. And don't you worry, listeners, she will turn up in our second Road to Secret Society, or a version of her will turn up in our second Road to Secret Society episode. Standing behind Captain Cold is the lumpen, misshapen form of the Batman villain Clayface. The opposite side of the podium from Clayface, and pointing in the direction of Captain Cold, is the Manhunter, who Peter and I met last year when we were reading the Walt Simonson, Archie Goodwin series in Detective Comics. The Manhunter, but he's dead. What's going on? And standing next to Manhunter is Gorilla Grodd, and they're obviously in some kind of high-tech laboratory. There's all sorts of equipment and screens all around them, lots of switches and pulsing lights. And as Captain Cold looks around in astonishment, Clayface says, "I say we should have killed him like we said we would, Star Sapphire. Who needs him anyway?" And the Manhunter says, "We do, Clayface." And then Grodd chips in with,
"Manhunter is quite correct, my many-visaged friend. For our organisation to be strong, it must be representative."
Captain Cold brings his gun to bear on Gorilla Grodd, saying, "Oh yeah? I don't know who you think you are, Fuzzface, but as far as joining your crummy club goes, you can..." And he's interrupted, because Manhunter pulls a pistol from his belt and points it at Captain Cold, saying, "Hold it, Cold. Calm down and cool off." And at this point, we should probably do all the captioning in this double-page spread. Along the top, a banner reads,
Chapter 1. Beware the Brotherhood of Crime.
There's a little scroll which reads,
Members attending, Captain Cold, Star Sapphire, Manhunter, Clayface, Gorilla Grodd, and the Director.
The Director, interesting. And there's another little box which gives us the credits for this issue.
Jerry Conway, writer-editor, Rick Estrada, pencils, Pablo Marcos, inker.
Excellent. So we return to the plot after all of that. Captain Cold has stepped down. He's standing in front of Manhunter, who's put a hand to Captain Cold's shoulder. Captain Cold says, "Remove your hand, redhead, or I'll remove it for you. At the elbow." To which Manhunter says, "I've been trained to defend myself with skills you've never heard of, Captain. For your own sake, relax." And Grodd looks on approvingly and says,
Bravo, Manhunter. Your peacemaking instincts are admirable, if not effective. Let's leave such efforts to a master, shall we?
And Grodd gestures towards the lady in their company, which prompts Manhunter to say, "You mean Star Sapphire?"
Who else? Captain Cold's eye for women is quite well known, after all.
I guess you're right, Grodd. For a gorilla, even a mutated one, you sure know human nature. A reference, of course, to the new adventure novel by Paul Cornell. We see that Star Sapphire is gently stroking Captain Cold's chin in the background as she says,
Come now, Captain. You know you're among friends. The greatest villains the world has ever known. Admittedly, we did kidnap you with our teleporter, but now that you're here, aren't you glad you've come?
And they're standing very close. Cold puts his hands to her waist as she grips his broad shoulders, as the captain says, "If the rest of those fools were like you, dear woman, wild horses couldn't keep me away." And as they stand, we see Clayface watching them, and he thinks to himself, "Bunch of creeps, especially that Captain Cold bozo. Don't know why I let myself get talked into this freak joint, but now that I'm here, I'd like to find out just why we..." Huh? That door opening. And indeed, a door is opening behind him.
The sound is sharp, like a gunshot in the semi-silent room. A sudden creak of hinges, the rumble of a massive door. At once the five villains react, each in his own inimitable fashion.
Yes, there's a large creak. As the door opens, Clayface rather redundantly points and says, "Look out! The door!" As Captain Cold pulls his gun and fires with a... He says, "I knew this was a trap. I knew it." Manhunter tensing says, "If it is a trap, someone's going to be sorry and dead." Cold replies, "Don't worry, Manhunter. If anyone's going to attack, it's gonna be Captain Cold. My ice ray will freeze anything, fast and for good." And we see the figure that has come through the door has indeed been completely coated in ice. He's very familiar, I'll say that much. Is this the first proper appearance in a story?
It is, yes.
I know he has appeared on the podcast when we did the Jimmy Olsen, Jack Kirby episode, but anyway, we'll wait until the gathered villains identify him. We see that he's managed to make his way into the room, now completely covered in ice, with everyone standing around and looking. Manhunter says to his frozen felon friend, "I'll say this for you, Cold. You don't waste time thinking. Did it occur to you this guy might have been the man who called this little meeting?" Cold says, "What if he was? I never asked to come here, remember?"
Manhunter's angry retort is lost as, abruptly, another sound fills the cavernous meeting hall. the splintering sound of breaking ice.
Yes, there's a very large sort of sound effect as the ice surrounding this figure breaks. Star Sapphire points and says,
Look, the ice, it's shattering. What?
and then in the first panel of page 6 there is a massive as the shards of ice go flying and all the supervillains cower to try and avoid being hit. They stand in a line in the next panel as Grodd says,
I believe this is our host.
Clayface says, That face, I've seen that face before. Star Sapphire's turn.
Months ago, he and some others fighting in New York.
Captain Cold says, His name. I can't remember his name. But Manhunter helpfully says, I can. He's the one man your ice trap couldn't hold, Captain Cold. Darkseid, Prince of Apocalypse. And indeed, that is who it is. They quoted Darkseid in ice. Good grief. Darkseid, looking furious, it must be said, looking very inconvenienced, then says,
True, Paul Kirk, but you may call me the Director, just as I call you Manhunter. Welcome, all of you, to the Brotherhood of Crime.
Grodd steps forward to shake hands with Darkseid, saying,
It is indeed a pleasure. I've often wondered what became of you after that man Orion defeated your henchman Calabac.
And a little asterisk takes us to a caption which reads,
Portrayed in New Gods issue 11, Jerry.
And Darkseid, or the Director, replies,
I've been resting. As you can imagine, Calabac's destruction caused me some small inconvenience, and I've spent the last several months reconsidering my plans. But we've much to talk about. I've a proposal to make, one which should interest you all.
And Darkseid moves off at this point, back through the doors he's just come through, and he leads everyone out along a sort of walkway, bridge-type situation. We see some more amazing decor inside wherever this place is. As they move along, we get a nice moody shot of the Manhunter as he thinks to himself, Something tells me there's more to this Brotherhood than meets the proverbial eye. Darkseid, for instance. And then we get a nice inset shot of Manhunter's head as his thoughts continue for the very striking image at the top of page 7. According to information uncovered by the Council, that power-hungry group of living brains who rescued me from death and trained me to be an assassin, and there's an asterisk which leads to...
Shown in Detective Comics numbers 437 to 443, Jerry, or indeed the previous episode of this podcast.
Yes. Manhunter's mental monologue continues. This Darkseid character is actually an alien. And over a fantastic montage of Darkseid sort of standing and laughing, we see images of Granny Goodness and Mantis and Orion and Lightray and Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, all sorts of stuff going on. As I say, we'll put this one in the socials. But Kirk continues to think, a self-proclaimed god who tried to take control of the Earth 2 years ago, only to be beaten back by another group of new gods from a planet called New Genesis. If Darkseid has returned to Earth, it means he's ready to try again, to enslave our world and everyone in it. Which begs the question, what on earth does he want with us?
Manhunter's unspoken question is soon answered as, moments later, a fantastic sky sled zooms into the night over Manhattan, heading south to an unknown destination and destiny.
Yes, we get a great
Zoom
sound effect as this very interesting looking sort of flying saucers. There's loads of them right now. There's the one at the JSA we're just kicking about and then a little alien guy came down and it's got a big sort of grill at the front, wide sort of layered wings, some rockets firing out. We can see them all the villains, in a little sort of cabin at the top. To my eye, it looks like it's flying away from the roof of one of the two columns of the World Trade Center.
Gasp. It does actually, yeah.
So which means that Captain Cold was teleported to New York. So all of this that we've seen so far was taking place inside a New York skyscraper. Goodness me. As it flies off, we hear Darkseid's voice saying,
Crime, my friends, it concerns all of us, some more than others.
And then we see in the first panel of page 8 that Darkseid is flying this little vehicle, which is hilarious. Because when I first met Darkseid, all he did was stand about talking with his arms behind his back, so it's quite amusing to see him out getting involved. He continues at the top of page 8.
We are each a criminal in our own way, stalked by a society which would see us imprisoned forever. For the most part, men are fools, too small to use their minds, too narrow to understand glory.
And over shots of Grodd, Sapphire, and Captain Cold, he continues,
You, Grodd, are the greatest genius of a race of super gorillas. Yet
Your people shun you and hunt you like an animal. You, Star Sapphire, you have gained your mysterious powers from an unearthly gem, once possessed by a woman named Carol Ferris, now owned by you alone. You, Captain Cold, once known as Len Snarts, a man who has mastered the secrets of Ultra Cold, but who is hounded because he has chosen to strike against society rather than for.
There's a very moody shot of the Manhunter as Darkseid continues.
You, Manhunter, the clone of Paul Kirk, an adventurer who disappeared in the late 1940s. You are perhaps the strangest man here today, if not the most deadly.
And then poor Clayface just gets a little insert shot as we see the weird flying saucer thing scurrying along as Darkseid continues.
And you, Clayface, unhappy creature with the ability to mimic any form, whose own body is so hideous, only the strong of stomach can look upon you now. We are all misfits, all criminals, alone till this moment, but now, alone no longer.
Captain Cold leaps to his feet, grabbing Darkseid by the shoulder, saying, "Bunk! You keep talking about a team, Buster, but talk is cheap. What's in it for us? Why should we join this Brotherhood of crime?" Darkseid furiously grabs one of Cold's wrists, saying,
You must never touch me, Captain. Do you understand? Never!
Grabs him by the scruff of his jacket, picks him up and throws him where he lands in a corner with a crush. Darkseid turns to the remaining villains, saying,
My purpose in forming this Brotherhood will be made clear quite soon. Until then, I trust we'll have no further outbursts, shall we?
And everyone looks suitably admonished as a caption reads,
The only response is silence, and in this case, silence does indeed give consent.
Page 9 rounds out with a shot of Captain Cold lying in a heap in the corner, ruefully thinking to himself, Sure thing, Darkseid. I'll keep quiet, all right, for now. But when the time comes, you'll be sorry for what you did tonight. Sorry. Forever.
The remainder of the journey passes uneventfully. Then, less than an hour later, somewhere in West Virginia...
They're going to visit Ross. Amazing.
Hi, Ross, if you're listening.
Maybe that's how Ross hurt his foot. Maybe Darkseid picked him up and threw him across the room or something.
Get hit by a scant Omega beam.
Yes, that's probably, to be fair, that's probably more likely. Ross, we hope you're feeling better. And what we see in West Virginia is obviously some kind of military establishment at the bottom of a very steep hill. Maybe perhaps one of the mountains that Laurel and Hardy used to sing about.
The Blue Ridge Mountains?
Yes. There's a tall fence, I have to say, very lazily drawn. And there's a very lazily drawn military policeman standing outside with a rifle, keeping guard. A sign can be seen that says, keep out. And in the background, with a careful shh sound effect, we see Darkseid's weird ride landing. In the next panel, the villains disembark and start making their way down towards the military establishment, with Clayface saying, What kind of weird place is this? Manhunter whispers, Quiet, Clayface. Something tells me we should be whispering. Unless I miss my guess, that's a government installation up ahead. To which Darkseid replies,
Quite correct, Manhunter. To be specific, Government Research Base DX-324.
Clayface replies, Great. So what are we doing here? Then Grodd replies to him, saying,
I assume Darkseid brought us here to commit a crime. True, Darkseid.
And then Darkseid gets a moody close-up as he says,
Your astuteness astounds me, Grodd.
This base manufactures a certain war chemical, soon to be outlawed in the next Geneva Convention, but for the moment, quite legal and quite valuable.
Alone, none of us could possibly steal such a prize, but together...
Captain Cold pulls his gun. Moving forward, he says, I get your point, Darkseid. At last. Let's say I get rid of the fence while you guys get ready for a main assault.
Excellent. Go, Captain Cold, go!
And as we arrive at the top of page 11, a tiny caption reads,
Chapter 2,
and a larger caption banner reads,
Enemy, thy name is evil. With a shout, the man known as Captain Cold leaps forward, his cold gun blasting out a beam of icy energy. Even as Star Sapphire launches her own attack, the two forces combining into one.
Yeah, very effectively, we see Captain Cold firing his gun, which seems to form a large fist, which makes a dent in the fence. And as he does this, Star Sapphire gestures, and a burst of energy, we don't know what colour it is because the copy's in black and white, strikes some of the soldiers that we can see with a zap. The fence is taken down with a crunch as Captain Cold strikes. Captain Cold saying, "Ha! Maybe there's something to this team stuff after all, Sapphire. Look at those soldiers. Their expressions. Ha! Yes, and the soldiers do not look happy. Sapphire, flying over our heads, replies,
Don't let it go to your head, Captain. We haven't won yet, you know. There's still the small matter of getting inside.
At this point, Star Sapphire gestures again with her left hand. There is a sound effect as her bolt of energy strikes one of the buildings, as she says,
Some kind of electrical field is disrupting my mental energy bolts. I can't get through.
We see Grodd running into action in the next panel as he says,
Mental energy is electrical in nature, Sapphire, so neither your mental abilities nor mine can have the desired effect. Of course, there are energies other than mental, such as physical strength, and Grodd is the strongest of us all.
And as the villains all rush towards the building that Star Sapphire tried to zap with her powers, Grodd goes full tilt into one of the walls with a
Crash!
breaking right through. They're inside in the final panel of page 12 with Manhunter saying, You know, Grodd, if the supervillain game ever gets slow, you could always hire out as a bulldozer.
This is no time for idle amusement, Manhunter. As you see, we're not alone.
No, it's a few soldiers approaching who start firing their machine guns with a... And this is great because Manhunter launches himself into action, saying, Glad you mentioned them, Grodd, otherwise I might never have noticed. He flips himself into the air, somersaulting forwards, as the soldiers continue to fire at him, but he somehow manages to dodge their bullets, and then he collides with them all with a whomp, landing with his feet and knocking them all out. But then some more soldiers appear, holding their weapons, and one of them says,
Hold it right there! Another move and we'll waste you all!
And we see the villains, Sapphire, Manhunter and the others, all standing, looking very carefully at the soldiers with their guns pointed at them, as the younger-looking soldier then says, Too bad for them they didn't see us come in the side door, eh, Hank? And then off-camera a voice says, Very true, soldier. And now, if you don't mind, this test exercise is officially over. We see a senior-looking older general with a thick moustache looking down at the two younger soldiers. One replies saying,
Test? You mean this isn't for real?
Come now, gentlemen. I'm surprised at you. All good soldiers should be able to tell the real from the unreal. Otherwise, anything might happen. And with that, the general reaches forward, grabs the two soldiers by the head, their helmets, and slams them into each other with a massive bonk sound effect. The two soldiers are down, unconscious on the ground. It's in panel 3 of page 14. The general metamorphoses into Clayface, who concludes, See what I mean? And one of the others cries,
Clayface!
Darkseid takes the lead. They all start moving forward again. Darkseid saying,
An excellent disguise, my friend.
Grodd remarks,
I'm surprised your feeble brain came up with such an idea.
Think you're pretty smart, don't you, Ape? Guys like you, they give me a pain.
Silence!
Cries Darkseid as they move forward into another room where we can see some technicians, scientists operating. There's a big canister on top of a tabletop with what looks like a laser beam or something firing into it, all sorts of nozzles and things all going on. The villains walk in, Darkseid points in the direction of all this equipment, saying,
We've arrived at our destination, and there lies our goal. War Gas 94, the deadliest nerve gas in the world.
Wargas 94, I'm pretty sure they supported the Montrose Avenue at the Middlesbrough Arena on their final tour. I need to check with Matt and see if that was the case. Darkseid gets an exciting close-up as he continues.
With it, we can blackmail the Earth with the entire human race as a hostage. Act quickly, my friends. The moment of decision is now.
And at that, the villains leap into action with a caption at the top of page 15 reading,
As one entity, the villains lunge. Grodd plunges like an avalanche into two defending scientists, while Star Sapphire creates a barrier between the remaining defenders and the nerve gas with a wave of a feminine hand.
The remaining defenders. Yes, we see Star Sapphire zapping Nighthawk, Gargoyle and Hellcat. And if that's not a throw-forward hint, I don't know what is. There's a great
Crash!
as Grodd throws a few specky scientists flying, as we caption indicates, and there's a great
Zut!
as Sapphire strikes the defenders. I'm going to have to fight the urge to do a photograph of a Star Sapphire action figure striking my Nighthawk and Hulk action figures and a caption saying, not appearing in our latest episode.
Go for it.
We get another caption that reads,
It's Clayface who first reaches the canister, but he doesn't hold it for long.
Yes, we see Clayface delightedly jumping forward to grab Wargas 94, and as he does this, it looks as though he's bumped into Captain Cold, who says, Why, you mud-faced fool! Shove me aside, will you? Maybe it's time you cooled off, Clayface, and left what matters in somewhat more reliable hands. And with a
Zoot!
he zaps Clayface with his cold gun, freezing him on the spot so he can run forward and grab the canister. And as he holds it up, looking at it, and to my eyes, in this panel of Captain Cold at the bottom of page 15, he looks really like the security chief from the Doctor Who story The War Games.
It does, yes.
What a stupid fool you are. We see a hairy fist coming in behind him as a voice says,
A most laudable sentiment, Captain. One with which I heartily agree. However, since my hands are much more reliable than yours...
and with a
wham! Bam! I am your man.
George Michael and Andrew Ridgely turn up. Wake me up before you go, etc. Grodd punches Captain Cold, for it's him that's speaking, and knocks the canister of Wargas 94, every opportunity to say that I will take, out of Captain Cold's hands. Oh my god, they're all fighting between themselves. This is hopeless. Top of page 16, Grodd stands holding the canister of Wargas 94 as he says,
The prize is mine.
Darkseid gestures to him, opens his hand, almost like to try and calm him down, saying,
Enough of this rivalry. You've stolen the canister as I planned. Now, give it to me.
We see Manhunter at this point reaching for one of his throwing stars as he says, Not so fast, Darkseid. First, I've got some questions which require answers, and with a... He hurls his throwing star towards Grodd, who looks terrified. Darkseid and Sapphire also look terrified, but the star hits the canister, knocking it out of Grodd's hand, which leads us to the next caption.
Until today, none of these people have believed the story of Manhunter's almost supernormal agility. After today, they'll believe.
Yes, because there's a great shot of Manhunter leaping forward and throwing himself onto his hands and then flipping over in time to land in front of Grodd and catch the canister. Very dynamic, worthy of Neil Adams' panel of Manhunter, speaking almost to the camera, running out page 16. He holds the canister as Star Sapphire says,
Are you crazy? If that canister split open, we would have been killed.
And at that, we might have been lucky, Sapphire. At least we wouldn't spend the rest of our lives as slaves.
What are you talking about?
And Manhunter points at their sponsor, saying, Ask him, Darkseid. The villains all gather around him, with Manhunter still holding the canister, saying, Haven't you asked yourself what Darkseid wants with us all? Doesn't it seem strange that a creature with his ambition would turn to petty crime? Of course it's strange, because it isn't true. Darkseid hasn't turned to crime. His ambition remains the same, to destroy our world or enslave it. Captain Cold rubs his chin thoughtfully, saying, Huh? That doesn't make sense. Why would he... Come to us? Replies Manhunter. I'm not sure, Captain Cold. Maybe he's trying a new tactic. Enlisting criminals on Earth to do his dirty work. Turning us into a crummy fifth column. Yeah. And at this, Grodd leaps for Darkseid, saying,
Manhunter, we owe you a great deal for the service you performed tonight. Clearly we've been used, and I for one don't like it.
Grodd, no! You're making a mistake! That isn't Darkseid, it's... And as Grodd collides with Darkseid, there is a massive... Trouble! Darkseid explodes! First panel of page 18. Grodd is lying on the floor amongst some broken bits of Darkseid. As Manhunter concludes, an android. The real Darkseid could have handled this theft alone. Obviously, this was a test. Slightly disgruntled and uncomfortable-looking Grodd replies,
Obviously.
He gets to his feet in the next panel with Star Sapphire saying,
Is anything damaged, Grodd? Only my pride.
Still holding the canister, Manhunter looks down at the wreckage, saying, The android must have been programmed to self-destruct in the event of failure. But we didn't fail, chips in Clayface as Captain Cold concludes, Yeah, we've still got the war gas, Manhunter. True, replies Kirk, and we could use it for blackmail as Darkseid said, but I've got another suggestion. Huh? What's that? asks Clayface, and then, over a couple of close-ups, Manhunter replies, simply this. If Darkseid succeeds, we will suffer along with the honest. I propose we remain a team. a secret society of the supervillain elite. Together, we can fight Darkseid's ambition, even as we pursue our own extra-legal goals. We have the power, my friends. Do we have the will?
For a long moment, the 5 villains are silent, and then, as though on cue, they shout assent.
Yes!
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 And in their souls, each one knows the war has just begun.
And there we have it, listeners. There's no next issue caption, although there probably would have been. First thing I find it very difficult to accept Darkseid taking part in petty burglary.
Yes, that is the main bugbear we have with this, although we know it's not Darkseid, but obviously it's basically the equivalent of a Doom bot, isn't it?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, of like having the main bad guy, but he's there as an android, but it really weakens Darkseid as a character. Just seeing him running around with these ne'er-do-wells, it's bizarre.
Yeah, running down corridors, giving instructions. I mean, as I've said in the past, I've not read a lot of the 70s New God stuff. You have. How does this compare? I mean, I always got the sense he's a bit more aloof and away from things in those.
Yeah, he's not majorly hands-on unless it's like, grappling with Orion. He's more of a strategist, although you don't mess with Darkseid. So,
I mean, one thing that's interesting is that it's obviously rooted in the continuity because there's a footnote, a reference to the plot of New Gods issue 11, which is very unusual to see those stories being referenced in a sort of a mainstream DC book, because there was always that sense with a lot of the Fourth World stuff that it was taking place elsewhere. And just Mr. Miracle turning up in Brave and Bold is about the closest you got to any kind of interaction, really.
yeah, this is the start of Jerry Conway bringing the New Gods back. Obviously, we've had the first issue special issue, The Return of the New Gods, and he's got The Return of the New Gods coming. But obviously, this is folding into his Jerry Conway editorialship.
Sure.
And he's obviously keen to use them as characters, although it feels a lot less grand than what Kirby did.
Sure.
Because, as we said, Darkseid usually works through his minions, through his ciphers. He's the strategist, he's the thinker. But in this, it was so bizarre seeing Darkseid on his own. That's the thing. Because you'd expect Desaad to be round the corner or something like that, or Granny Goodness or someone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were saying that, because the first time I really properly encountered Darkseid was in the Legends miniseries.
Oh, he was epic in that, yeah.
In that, he was very much the strategist. It was
Yeah.
Glorious Godfrey and everyone else who was doing anything. Well, he just stood trading barbs with the Phantom Stranger.
And that was perfect. That's what it should be. Yeah, it's great.
It's very distracting. Even nowadays, when he's used a lot more often as a mainstream baddie, and obviously he's involved quite heavily in what's happening in Justice League and Booster Gold and everything right now as we speak. Even though nowadays he's much more sort of integrated into the main DCU, I can't imagine that I've ever read a story where he runs down a corridor away from some soldiers.
Yes.
It really does detract, I think, from it really lessens him.
Completely.
Interesting that, aside from him, it's really the Captain Cold and Manhunter show, so it's good to see Captain Cold because we've not had him on the show for a very long time. He will pop up, obviously, in some issues of the regular series, so that's good because I like trying to do my Wentworth Miller voice. The Manhunter thing's very interesting here.
Yes.
Because they do say that he's a clone, don't they?
Yeah, But as far as we're aware, all the clones, everything were destroyed at the end of that Manhunter saga. And there is no references to this one's origin.
Yeah.
Obviously, when the actual proper series starts, we'll see what happens when we get there.
This is the thing. We don't want to preempt too much of what we'll actually talk about when we do the main series, but I suppose the Paul Levitt's introduction did sort of say watch out for a few hints of... So we'll have to pay close attention as we go and see if we notice any of the things that they might have been hinting at.
Yes. You could say the same for Star Sapphire as well, because she's a brand new character in this. It's a familiar title, but it's a different character. It's not Carol Ferris. It's someone else with those powers and abilities. And again, no backstory. I incredibly look forward to the intense backstory we get for Star Sapphire in the main series.
Yes. Let's hope it's all told in captioning and you can say it and I don't have to.
There we are.
Jokes. For what it's worth, I enjoyed this. It was really, really interesting seeing this group of characters working together.
Yeah.
We both agreed that Manhunter series, when we covered it, was one of the best things we'd ever done for the we'd ever covered for the show. I really get a sense that Jerry Conway was a bit of a fanboy.
Oh, without a doubt.
That enjoyed, not in the sort of same slightly inward-looking way that Roy would sometimes do when he pulled things together from different sources. But you get a sense this is quite like what James Robinson would do in the 2000s.
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, if he was doing Starman or later when he was doing even his Invaders series of not too long ago when he folded some of the Eternals characters in, he's very good at looking at right, all these characters are all published with the same company, which means hypothetically I can use all of them.
Yeah.
So there's a nice juxtaposition seeing Manhunter side by side with Clayface, side by side with Captain Cold. Everyone seems to be true to their character. No one seems to be acting unusually or irregularly.
Yeah. I do like the use of Grodd in this, although it's only really his physical powers that you see. You don't see any of his mental powers in this. But I do like the fact that Grodd is someone who doesn't mind doing the physical acts as well as just being, this mental powerhouse. But Grodd's quite happy to pummel people to pieces. So,
I mean, it's very interesting just sort of seeing Grodd in this situation as well, because he's another one who's a bit of a bit more of a schemer sometimes.
Yeah.
It's interesting just seeing them all these characters being used in this way, and it's going to be very interesting to see which of them turn up in the regular series and what the differences are, from this one, because, we haven't recorded it yet, listeners, but it'll be next week's episode, all being well. The first few issues, in fact, of Secret Society, I think are pretty crazy. There's a lot going on.
Yes.
And I think as a series, I think it's a little bit more enjoyable and coherent than Freedom Fighters. That's my memory of it anyway. So we'll see how we get on over the next few months.
My memory of it is that it's an absolute mess, but I love every page. It's constantly shifting creative teams and all sorts of things. It takes a long time for it to actually find its proper feet, and when it does, it's cancelled.
I know.
Yeah.
Now, usually, obviously, listeners, Peter and I's justification for doing stories is the legacy aspect, or if it's multiversal. So some issues of Secret Society of Supervillains aren't too multiversal in their approach, but there's enough of a sort of crossover with the bigger universe and stuff, and some characters do turn up towards the end. And obviously the presence of Manhunter, he's an aspect of a legacy character. The Wizard
is an Earth 2 character, and he's pretty much throughout.
Yeah, he's heavily involved. We're basically going to cover the whole series in the same way we're going to be covering All-Star Comics and Freedom Fighters, because it's one of the three big sort of ongoings that are launched at this period, and they're all very similar in a lot of ways. So if every issue doesn't involve a footnote to an issue of Adventure Comics or feature a trip to Earth 2, we hope you'll let us off, everyone, and just come along for the ride, because it's rooted in what Conway is trying to do and the essence of everything that's going on with DC at this point in the mid-70s.
As you said, he's folding in stuff that he's obviously read and enjoyed, like the Manhunter stuff. Obviously, he saw the potential in the character of Star Sapphire, but didn't want to be lumbered with the baggage of the Carol Ferris version.
Yeah, which is a genius move, to be honest.
Which is great, because, it's someone else having a power ring. Same sort of idea.
Exactly.
Clayface is fascinating as well, because Clayface was a big deal in Batman in the 60s. He was a huge deal and one of his biggest recurring villains. Then he kind of just fell off the face of the earth, really, when we hit the Bronze Age, until he was replaced by Clayface 3, who was a bit more killy than Clayface 2, this version. But it's great that he's just embracing all these. And as you said, the Darkseid character, that was like from the fairly recent past in DC history. It's only from a few years before, as was the Manhunter. So he's milked stuff from recent history, and he's milked stuff from, the Silver Age. Just to pick and choose these characters. And I think introducing it through Captain Cold's point of view, pretty much, is quite a clever move, because he's a street level kind of everyman kind of character. He's very kind of relatable as far as an entry character goes. It's not like you're introducing with Gorilla Grodd or something and you're like...
Yeah, it's hard to identify with a talking gorilla.
Yeah.
And obviously Cold's one of Flash's most popular, visible, regular sort of recurring villains. He's quite a lot of really cool covers over the years, so it makes sense to kind of get him involved, because... I imagine these guys would all have been on the original cover art, and it's a good way of enticing an audience in a way, is getting these people involved.
Yeah. And one of the things that's cool about Jerry's use of Captain Cold, it's his personality trait. It's like the thing that Captain Cold regards himself as a ladies' man. And of course, that's like a subtle hint, Star Sapphire, just talk him round, will you?
Yeah, that's quite funny. It is very interesting, that, and it's quite an adult sort of thing to do. We haven't really had... It gets actually, speaking of such things, once Captain Comic comes along and starts parading about, it gets even more sort of adult, as it were. There's all that to look forward to. I'm actually quite excited about us doing Secret Society. A little bit more excited than I was about us doing Freedom Fighters. I think the potential for this, the idea of a team of supervillains is great. And there's been the Injustice Gang and the Injustice League and all this and various sort of things over the years. But this story that we've just covered is, to use a Doctor Who term, it's a bit unbound.
Yes, and a parallel universe that happened.
It's a first draft. But there hasn't really been a cross-hero villain sort of like team-up sort of thing before this point, really, has there?
Not majorly, no. We've had bits and pieces, but nothing quite as rooted as this, not quite as fully established. I mean, we've got things like the Joker comic, it's ongoing at the moment, that's obviously from the villain's perspective, and that sort of thing. Cobra as well was out at this time, but this is something different because it's a lot more fluid. You're not stuck with one character. You can do anything with that broad. Yeah. And they do anything with that broad title of Secret Society. In
some ways, I suppose it's a big forerunner of the Suicide Squad idea.
Yeah.
In a way, these villains aren't obviously like working together to get time off their sentence or anything like that. They're not in the thrall of the government, but it's an unlikely collection of people who probably wouldn't be spending time together otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, their common goal is villainy and nothing but. Yes, I'm very excited about us jumping into Secret Society. Yes. And of course, next week we'll be doing the first issue of the series proper.
But that's what we thought about this failed pilot for the Secret Society of Supervillains.
Yes, it's the Unearthly Child Take 1.
It pure is. It's even black and white.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is.
But what did you think about this failed pilot? Why don't you write to us and let us know? You can email us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media because we have some interesting bonus content going up this week. On Facebook, Instagram and Blue Sky, we're at the Earth 2 Podcast, and on Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it is the number 2 for all of our socials.
It certainly is. As I always say at this point, listeners, if you're enjoying what we're doing, please consider going to wherever it is you receive your podcasts and leaving us a positive review. That would be lovely. Or you could go to our coffee page and buy Peter the price of a beverage. Or, as some very kind people often do, please consider sharing one of our posts on your own social media. All these sort of things help us increase our visibility and help us grow and help us spread the gospel that is the pre-crisis DC multiverse.
On that bombshell, I've been Peter.
I've been David. We'll see you next week on
the Earth 2 Podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.
And there's a very lazily drawn military policeman standing outside with a rifle, keeping guard. A sign can be seen that says "Keep Out," and in the background we see Darkseid's weird vehicle not crashing. Sorry.
The end.
Well, that's what we thought
of. No wonder they wanted to redo this issue.
You can imagine Carmine sat there saying to Jerry Conway, "And what? It ends on panel 1 of page 10? Get out of here!"